The funeral was silent, heavy with grief until the police dog acted. He jumped onto his handler's casket, and his subsequent actions left the entire room in tears. Here's what happened. But before we get into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. And if you love extraordinary police dog stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The October morning arrived gray and somber, as if the sky reflected the sadness of those assembled at Oakwood Memorial Chapel. A cool breeze stirred the nearby maple trees, their crimson leaves sometimes detaching to briefly swirl, before landing on the gravel pathway where numerous police cruisers were arranged in precise formation. Within the chapel, the atmosphere was thick with the combined fragrances of polished wood, floral displays, and the palpable stress of shared sorrow. Officers in dress blues occupied the pews, their badges adorned with black mourning bands. Their faces, typically hardened by years of service, visibly strained to remain composed as they observed the flag-draped casket at the room's front. Officer Michael Mike Reeves, 34 years old and an 8-year veteran of the Riverside Police Department, a recipient of 2 commendations for bravery, rested silently within the wooden box. An official portrait, positioned on an easel next to the casket, depicted a man with keen hazel eyes and a gentle smile that didn't fully convey a solemn demeanor. In the front row, Mike's parents were seated, visibly burdened by the sorrow of outliving their son. His mother held a handkerchief, while his father, a former officer, gazed forward. Next to them, Mike's sister Elaine dabbed at tears that appeared unending, her shoulders shaking with each inhale. Near the side entrance, a disturbance caught the attention of several people. Officer Terrence Wilson worked to manage a Belgian Malinois, whose strong physique trembled with anticipation. The dog's golden-brown eyes moved quickly around the chapel, examining every face and every area, as if looking for someone expected to be present. "Easy, Ranger," Wilson said softly, tightening his hold on the leash as the dog made a low, mournful sound. Ranger had been Mike's partner for 4 years. Working as a team, they had located missing children, arrested dangerous suspects, and uncovered hidden contraband that could have gone unnoticed. They were the K-9 unit's most accomplished team. Now Ranger's ears twitched, his nose working intensely, showing uncertainty in his posture. 4 years prior, Officer Mike Reeves had been in the impersonal hallway of the regional K-9 training center, anxiously straightening his uniform collar. Following 6 years of patrol work, he received approval for the K-9 unit, a goal he'd held since his academy days. The training sergeant, a stern woman named Martinez with 20 years of experience visible on her face, guided him towards the kennels. She cautioned him, her keys making noise as they walked, not to become too attached too quickly. He would work with 3 prospects before final assignments were made. Some partnerships succeed, others fail. The dog's choice is as important as your own. A lively atmosphere filled the kennel area. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Dutch Shepherds were watchful in their enclosures. Martinez paused at the 3rd kennel, where a tan Malinois with distinctive facial markings stood rigidly at attention, amber eyes following every movement. "This is Ranger, 18 months old, imported from a European working line," Martinez said, observing Mike's reaction. "He has a high drive, high intelligence, and could be too intense for some handlers." A prior candidate found him unmanageable, describing him as too intense. Mike lowered himself to the dog's level, keeping eye contact. Typically, police dogs displayed immediate enthusiasm or aggression upon approach, but Ranger was an exception. He stayed perfectly still, evaluating Mike with a disconcerting intensity, as if peering directly through him. "Hey there, partner," Mike said gently. At those words, a slight alteration appeared in Ranger's stance. A minor change that only Martinez detected, his eyebrows lifting a little. The dog moved toward the kennel gate with careful steps, paused once to sniff at Mike's offered hand, then settled, holding eye contact. "Well," Martinez said, "that's certainly not what I expected." The bond was instant, though neither person nor dog could articulate it. When they started training together the following day, the other handlers observed in amazement as Ranger seemed to predict Mike's instructions almost before he voiced them. By the 3rd week, Martinez discontinued the rotations, formally assigning pairs. Their initial significant challenge arose 6 months later, a missing 10-year-old child in Oakwood Park. The search had been ongoing for hours, with numerous agencies searching the thick woodland as night fell and temperatures decreased. Mike observed Ranger assessing the scene, tracking a scent trail that other canines had overlooked. "He's detected something," Mike transmitted to the command post. "We are proceeding east towards the creek bed." Rain had begun to fall, washing away scent particles, but Ranger never hesitated. He led Mike through thickets and over fallen trees until they found the boy, huddled beneath an overhanging embankment, hypothermic but alive. Their partnership extended beyond statistics. Mike had remained single, his apartment becoming their shared domain. Morning runs continued regardless of weather. Evenings were spent reinforcing training exercises that had become more like games, their lives completely intertwined. Mike's parents had thoughtfully provided Ranger with a Christmas stocking, acknowledging him as part of the family. The 911 call was received at 2:34 a.m. on Thursday, reporting a domestic disturbance on Elm Street, a residential area of modest single-family homes. Dispatch records indicated this was the third call originating from that address within the past 2 months, with prior incidents resolved without any arrests. Officer Chun was already en route, requesting additional support as per standard protocol. K9-7 was ready to assist, as Mike had radioed, with Ranger alert in the specialized compartment behind him. Acknowledged K9-7. The report indicated a male subject, possibly armed, with children present in the home. Mike's cruiser arrived approximately half a block from the address, maintaining dark lights to minimize the risk of escalation. Chen's patrol car was already on scene, positioned strategically to provide cover. Mike secured Ranger's tactical harness, and the dog instantly transitioned to working mode. "Report, what is the situation?" "Mike," she said as they neared Chun, who was positioned behind her vehicle door, hand on her holster. The male subject was identified as Jacob Reynolds, age 42. His wife had initiated the call, stating he had been consuming alcohol and had begun threatening her with a handgun when she announced her intention to leave him. 2 children were present inside the residence, aged 8 and 5. The house appeared dark, with only a single light illuminating the living room. Abruptly, the front door swung open, and a woman emerged, holding 2 children, all still in pajamas. "He's got a gun," she gasped, as Chen directed them towards the patrol cars. He stated he wasn't returning to jail. A records check verified Reynolds had previous arrests for assault and unlawful possession of a firearm. The situation had progressed from a domestic disturbance to a potential armed standoff. Reinforcements were on the way, estimated time of arrival 4 minutes. Dispatch updated, SWAT alerted but assembling. "We might not have 4 minutes, Mike responded, observing movement at the window. The subject appeared increasingly agitated. Additional patrol units arrived, officers taking positions around the perimeter. Mike released Ranger's leash, giving him a hand signal to stay close, a command that would keep the dog within 3 feet without restricting his movement. They proceeded to the side of the house, utilizing shadows for cover. "Got a visual," Mike reported quietly into his shoulder. Mike's subject in living room, confirmed armed, handgun in right hand, appears highly agitated. Captain Walsh's voice crackled over the radio. "Hold positions."
Ostage négociateur en route.
Reynolds, however, disregarded the order. The front door exploded inward. A figure appeared against the light within, weapon raised. "Stay back," he yelled, swinging the gun haphazardly between officers. Reynolds discharged a stray shot that struck Chen's patrol car. Officers retreated behind cover, issuing verbal instructions but refraining from firing due to the family's location behind vehicles. Reynolds moved down the front steps. One now pointed directly at the group, including his wife and children. Mike assessed the situation instantly. Reynolds had an unobstructed view of his family. Officers lacked a secure vantage point, and the man's finger was closing on the trigger. Mike gave Ranger the silent command they'd practiced repeatedly. 2 quick taps on his thigh, indicating an apprehension attack. Ranger surged forward with explosive speed, a tan blur in the darkness. At the same time, Mike moved to flank, positioning himself between Reynolds and his intended targets. Reynolds noticed the dog approaching and redirected his weapon towards the new danger. 2 shots echoed through the night. Ranger connected with Reynolds' arm, the expertly trained bite causing the man to drop his weapon. Both men went down, but Reynolds managed to fire first, with a bullet impacting Mike's chest just beneath his vest. A second shot followed from Mike's service weapon as he fell, hitting Reynolds in the shoulder, disabling him but not fatally. "Officer down! Officer down!" Chen's voice broke over the radio as she hurried to Mike, who had fallen onto the asphalt. Ranger kept his hold on Reynolds until another officer secured the suspect, then immediately moved away from the scene, a course of action he would not typically take, and rushed to Mike's side. The dog whined, pawing at his partner's chest where blood was quickly spreading across his uniform. "Stay with me, Reeves," Chen urged, applying pressure to the wound. "Bus is 2 minutes out." Mike's breathing came in shallow gasps, his eyes finding Ranger's. He whispered, "Good boy," lifting a shaking hand to touch the dog's head. "Best partner ever." Ranger lay down beside him, pressing his body against Mike's side as paramedics arrived. They worked frantically, loading Mike into the ambulance, but the bullet had struck at an angle that sent it beneath the protective vest, severing a major artery. Officer Michael Reeves was pronounced dead at Riverside Memorial Hospital at 3:28 a.m. While emergency personnel desperately attempted resuscitation, Ranger stayed in the emergency room hallway, with Officer Wilson holding his leash. The dog's eyes remained fixed on the trauma bay doors. When the doctor finally came out, shaking his head, Ranger appeared to comprehend before any words were spoken. His body drooped, the confident stance faltering as a howl began, a sound so intense, so resembling human sorrow, that seasoned emergency staff averted their gaze. Inside the chapel, the funeral service had commenced. Chief Roberts moved to the podium, his usual strong demeanor tempered by sorrow. Officer Michael Reeves represented the epitome of what it means to serve in the badge. He began to speak, his resonant voice firm despite the emotion evident in his eyes. During his 8 years of service, he demonstrated consistent courage, compassion, and dedication to this community. Nearby, Ranger's restlessness grew. Wilson held the leash securely, yet the dog's attention remained fixed, focused on the casket where his partner rested. The chief noted that Mike's devotion to his canine partner, Ranger, had forged one of the most successful teams in our department. Together they were credited with over 200 successful operations, saving countless lives and enhancing the safety of our community. Mike's mother wept softly, comforted by her husband's embrace. His sister Elaine remained stiffly beside them, sometimes touching the canine unit pin Mike had given her last Christmas. Captain Walsh then stepped to the podium, recounting a memory of Mike's first day on patrol. He arrived 30 minutes early, his uniform so impeccably pressed it appeared it could have cut paper, Walsh remembered, prompting a few sorrowful smiles. When I inquired about his promptness, he stated, "My dad always told me if you're on time, you're already late." Mike consistently exceeded expectations. As personal recollections transitioned into the official ceremony, Ranger displayed increasing signs of distress. The dog breathed rapidly, adjusting his posture, and kept his gaze fixed on the casket. Wilson worked to manage the situation, understanding the importance of the moment, yet obligated to ensure order throughout the service. The department chaplain commenced the religious segment of the service, his words of comfort seeming inadequate given the sight of a flag-draped casket and a room filled with grief. Though Officer Reeves walks through the valley of the shadow of death, he fears no evil, the chaplain stated. At these words, Ranger emitted a low whine that resonated through the quiet chapel, and several heads turned, with expressions of understanding rather than annoyance appearing on their faces. The service continued with the presentation of Mike's badge and service weapon to his parents. The department's bagpipe player moved to the front, the poignant melody of Amazing Grace echoing through the chapel. As the bagpipes ceased, a quiet stillness settled over the chapel. The funeral director walked to the podium, ready to provide directions for the procession to the cemetery. Prior to speaking, Ranger's demeanor changed significantly. The Belgian Malinois froze, his body trembling as if electrified. His eyes fixed on the casket widened. His breathing quickened, nostrils flaring as he perceived something only he could detect. Every muscle in his powerful frame tensed, coiling like a spring. "Something's wrong," Wilson whispered to Martinez, tightening his grip on the leash. "He's never acted like this before." Martinez recognized the signs. "That's not aggression," she whispered back. "That's recognition." At that moment, Ranger initiated his action with a swift advance that surprised Wilson. The dog broke free of the leash held by his handler. Multiple officers reacted to try and stop him, but Ranger was too quick. His actions were deliberate and purposeful as he sped down the central aisle. A collective intake of breath spread through the chapel as the Belgian Malinois moved toward the front, his paws making no sound on the carpeted floor. Mike's mother emitted a quiet cry, his father partially rising from his seat. Chief Roberts prepared to proceed, yet Ranger's behavior created a moment of hesitation for all present. It wasn't a display of hostility or fear, it was a sign of clear intention. Ranger approached the casket and halted, inhaling deeply around its sides. Then, with the same effortless skill that had distinguished him during his service, he jumped up, his front paws landing softly on the casket's rim. For a brief instant, he maintained his balance there, his amber eyes assessing the gathered mourners as if awaiting consent. There was no movement and no sound. A hush fell over the entire room. Ranger, with deliberate motions, pulled himself completely onto the casket, his nails producing the faintest clicking sound on the polished wood. The American flag covering the casket moved a little under his weight. The dog turned once, then positioned himself on top of the casket, directly above where Mike's chest would be. "Oh my God," Elaine whispered, tears flowing down her face. Ranger lowered his head, pressing his nose against the wood. He took a deep breath, then released it in a trembling exhale that appeared to hold all the grief imaginable. His ears pressed against his head as he whined, a sound so sorrowful it seemed to permeate the very walls. "Should I?" Wilson began, taking a tentative step forward. Captain Walsh raised a hand, halting him. "No," he said softly, "let him be." The dog's behavior shifted from active to observant. He assumed the familiar alert stance he had held many times in the patrol car, watchful, protective, prepared. His gaze moved across the room as if still performing his duties, still safeguarding his partner. Ranger remained perfectly still, his chest rising and falling in a pattern that appeared synchronized with an unseen power. The first shock among those grieving subsided into a deep silence, not distressing, but respectful. Then Ranger performed an action that shifted the moment from poignant to truly unforgettable. With deliberate slowness, he lifted his right paw and pressed it flat against the American flag, precisely over the spot where Mike's badge would be on his uniform. He maintained the position, unwavering, resolute, and clear. Elaine reacted with a gasp, her hand covering her mouth. "The salute," she breathed, her voice just audible to those close by. "That's Mike's special signal." A quiet buzz of conversation arose within the chapel, as those familiar with the meaning shared it with others. 3 years prior, Mike had developed a distinctive training cue with Ranger. It was a discreet signal, used exclusively between them, a customized gesture that Ranger would execute only in reaction to Mike's particular hand movement. This was not a component of regular police K-9 instruction. It was intimate, unique, and shared solely by them. Officer Chun, who was present the night Mike passed, moved closer to Captain Walsh. "Mike's last touch," she whispered, her voice cracking. Prior to the ambulance arrival, he touched Ranger's head in the manner he always used when issuing that command. It wasn't simply a gesture, Martinez explained softly to those present. It represented their method of conveying a message, signifying mission accomplishment when verbal communication was impossible. I have never observed another team exhibiting such a profound connection. As Ranger held the salute, his gaze remained steady and observant, as if anticipating additional direction. A profound quiet settled over the chapel, punctuated only by quiet weeping from Mike's family. Mike's father rose abruptly, his action capturing everyone's attention. The former officer moved toward the casket deliberately, maintaining a dignified posture despite the sadness visible on his face. He halted near Ranger, standing respectfully without touching the dog. Then, with careful control, he performed a formal police salute. "Mission accomplished. Son," he said, his voice thick with feeling but audible in the still room. One by one, each uniformed officer in the chapel stood and repeated the gesture, a multitude of salutes recognizing not only their deceased comrade, but the connection they were observing. Even civilian mourners rose, palms on their chests, accepting something beyond common comprehension. Ranger maintained his posture for a few more seconds, then gradually lowered his paw. He adjusted his position near the casket, turning to look at Mike's father. The dog's ears rose, his keen eyes observing the man's face. "He was so proud to be your partner," Mike's father said to Ranger, his voice a quiet murmur. "Every day he told us how fortunate he was to have you." The chaplain, who had been observing with evident feeling, moved forward once more. "In 20 years of service to the department," he said, speaking to those present, "I have conducted far too many ceremonies like this one. I have never seen such a demonstration of the connection between an officer and his canine partner." He paused, regaining his composure. "It seems there are relationships in this world that even death cannot break." The chaplain's words appeared to fill the chapel, offering solace where it had seemed impossible just before. Mike's mother, who had been almost devastated, stood a little straighter, her gaze fixed on Ranger. Mike frequently claimed the dog understood everything, she stated, in a voice audible to those around. He asserted Ranger could occasionally read his mind. She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. "I believed he was overstating things." Chief Roberts approached the podium once more, his own demeanor noticeably strained. "I believe we should modify our proceedings," he remarked, glancing at the funeral director. "It seems Ranger will be with his partner for the rest of the service." Throughout the service, Ranger stayed on the casket, a quiet protector watching over his companion. The funeral director, showing impressive flexibility, modified the arrangements to accommodate the dog. The customary pallbearers were in place, though questions remained regarding the concluding procession. "We need to proceed to the cemetery shortly," the director said to Captain Walsh. Walsh responded with a nod, then moved towards the casket with deliberate steps. Ranger spoke softly, mirroring the tone he had often heard Mike use. "We need to take Mike now." The dog's ears twitched at the familiar name, his amber eyes following Walsh's movements. He remained still, shifting his weight and settling more firmly atop the American flag. Mike's sister, Elaine, rose from her seat, dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. She walked towards the casket, her steps unsteady but resolute. She had observed the strong connection between her brother and his canine partner from the very beginning. She recalled numerous family dinners where Ranger sat at Mike's feet, and holidays where the dog received gifts alongside everyone else. "Ranger," she said softly, extending her hand palm up, mirroring the gesture she had seen Mike use many times. "It's okay, boy." The Belgian Malinois' attention turned to her, his nostrils flaring slightly as he analyzed her scent. The scent was close enough to Mike's to be recognized as belonging to his family. His ears moved forward, his head tilting as if assessing the situation. "Mike would be so proud of you," she said, her voice cracking. "You were the best partner he could have wished for, the best friend." Something in her words, or perhaps her tone, appeared to connect with the dog. Ranger looked from Elaine to the casket below him, then back to her. A quiet whine came from his throat. It wasn't a sound of distress now, but of inquiry. "I know," she murmured. "I miss him too." With extreme gentleness, she placed her hand on the dog's back. Ranger tensed briefly, then relaxed into the touch. Elaine stroked his fur, mirroring the way she'd seen her brother do after their shifts together. "We need to take Mike to his resting place now," she explained, speaking as if the dog understood every word. "Perhaps he did. Will you help us do that?" The chapel remained utterly silent, with everyone holding their breath as they observed this private moment. Ranger regarded Elaine for a considerable time, then rose slowly and deliberately. His movements were measured and respectful, ensuring his stability on the casket's curved top. For a brief moment he stood rigidly, resembling a dog in peak condition. Then, with a grace that moved many to tears, he descended from the casket, stepping gently onto the carpeted floor near Elaine. Wilson moved forward with the leash, but Elaine halted him with a raised hand. "Let him walk with us," she said, "with no restrictions." Mike would have wanted it. Chief Roberts gave his consent, and Wilson moved aside. The pallbearers arranged themselves, raising the casket with coordinated precision. As the solemn procession began its descent down the central aisle, Ranger stepped alongside the casket, positioned at heel, precisely where he would have walked beside Mike during patrols. Outside, the autumn air held the fragrance of rain in the distance. The hearse door closed with a quiet finality, sealing the last chapter. Ranger watched, a flicker of confusion returning to his stance. Wilson approached, anticipating the dog might need reassurance, but before he could offer the leash, Ranger acted. The Belgian Malinois walked purposefully to the police motorcycle that would lead the procession, Mike's motorcycle, now solemnly draped in ceremonial black bunting. Ranger settled beside it, adopting the familiar posture he'd used countless times when Mike was getting ready for their shift. Captain Walsh looked at the motorcycle officer who would be leading the procession. "Can you accommodate him?" The officer, who had previously worked with Mike and Ranger for years, responded immediately. "It would be an honor, sir." With care, the officer assisted Ranger into the specially adapted sidecar, designed for K-9 transport during parades and ceremonial events. The dog relaxed, his demeanor alert yet composed, as if accepting the situation. Upon arrival at the cemetery, the concluding ceremonies proceeded with military formality. The honor guard conveyed the casket to the gravesite, with Ranger following closely, still unrestrained but maintaining impeccable control. The chaplain offered concluding words of solace as the casket was placed. As the formal folding of the flag commenced, Ranger observed with unwavering attention, following each action. The carefully folded triangle was given to Mike's mother, who held it close. Next, the rifle salute occurred, 3 volleys that echoed through the autumn air. Ranger reacted slightly at the initial shots, but remained in position. By the 3rd volley, he remained perfectly still at attention, seemingly acknowledging the respect being shown. As the bugler played taps, the somber notes lingered in the air. Ranger advanced 3 steps. With careful movements, he lifted his paw again, pressing it against the casket in that customary salute, a concluding gesture between comrades that moved many to tears. When the final note subsided, Ranger retreated, then settled down near the gravesite, his chin resting on his paws. He remained steadfast until the last mourner had left. The cemetery gradually emptied, with mourners departing in small groups, many taking a moment to look back at the striking scene. A devoted dog kept watch near his partner's final resting place. Mike's family were the last to leave the gravesite. His father knelt beside Ranger, placing a calloused hand on the dog's back. "You'll always have a home with us, boy," he said, his voice thick with feeling. Mike would have wanted us to support one another at this time. The Belgian Malinois looked up at him, its amber eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that went beyond the boundaries of species. He shifted a little closer, acknowledging the bond, then turned his attention to the casket now being placed in the ground. Captain Walsh came forward, taking off his formal hat and holding it to his chest. He stated that the department had considered Ranger's future. Traditionally, canines are retired after their handlers pass away. Mike's mother looked up sharply. He was too young to retire. Too skilled. Walsh nodded. "That's what we believe as well. With your permission, Officer Wilson has volunteered to become Ranger's new handler. They already share a connection, and Wilson initially trained with Mike." Elaine wiped away fresh tears. Mike would agree. He often said Wilson was the only other officer Ranger seemed to truly listen to. As if in agreement with her words, Ranger stood, shaking his coat slightly. He glanced between the family members and Walsh, then purposefully moved to stand beside Wilson, who had come closer quietly. "I'll never replace Mike," Wilson said, his voice faltering. "I wouldn't attempt to, but I pledge to you and Ranger that I will respect their partnership in our work together." Ranger looked once more at the gravesite, his stance conveying a sense of finality, an acceptance that had not been visible previously. With deliberate movements, he turned and walked beside Wilson toward the waiting police vehicles. He did not look back. As any good officer would, He was moving forward, carrying the legacy of his fallen partner with him into whatever missions awaited. The bond between a canine officer and their handler exemplifies one of the most sincere partnerships in law enforcement, founded on absolute trust, steadfast loyalty, and a connection that transcends verbal communication. The final tribute given by Ranger serves as a poignant reminder that profound feelings are often conveyed through actions rather than words. Have you ever observed a moment where an animal appeared to comprehend death or loss in a manner that seemed inexplicable? What fosters such strong connections between humans and their canine partners that they can surpass even the final parting? If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like and share it with someone who appreciates the extraordinary bond between handlers and their canine partners. These incredible dogs risk their lives alongside human officers every day, demonstrating courage and loyalty that deserve our recognition and respect. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story about police canine heroes. Our collection of true stories about dogs keeps expanding, with new videos added each week to display these extraordinary collaborations. Please view the suggested videos currently displayed for additional moving narratives that emphasize the steadfast commitment of police dogs nationwide. We will also see you again tomorrow at the same time with another fresh video. The tracking dog abruptly halted at the forest's boundary, his fur bristling and a low growl emanating from his chest. "Shadow, what is it?" Sergeant Morgan inquired, securing her hold on the leash. Shortly after, they located the old house situated deep within the woods, a place where no house ought to exist, but what they found inside instilled a chilling dread. What precisely did they unearth in that neglected location? Please subscribe and leave a comment below, letting us know your location. Let's get started. Kate Morgan was loading equipment into her department SUV as dawn approached. She watched with concern as Shadow, her Belgian Malinois partner, paced anxiously beside the vehicle. Usually the dog would wait calmly during preparations, but today his strong body stayed rigid, shifting between gentle movements and focused looks at the nearby forest. At 34, Sergeant Morgan had become Pinewood County's leading search expert. Shadow, possessing his advanced certification and abilities in tracking and cadaver detection, had made them the department's preferred team for missing persons cases. The call had arrived after midnight. Jason Reeves, age 27, was missing after failing to return from his day hike on Blackwater Ridge Trail. The first search team found no sign of him in the darkness. Sheriff Donovan arrived with the rest of the team, his face showing worry. "Morning, Kate. The weather report indicates rain by afternoon. We have roughly 6 hours before conditions worsen." Kate nodded, making sure her equipment was secure. "We'll find him." Donovan observed the dog's agitated state. "What's got Shadow so worked up?" he asked. "I'm not sure," she replied. "He has been like this since they arrived." She scratched behind Shadow's ears. "Focus up, partner." But as the team gathered for briefing, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that Shadow's agitation wasn't merely pre-search excitement. In their 3 years together, she learned to read his signals, and this behavior felt different, almost like a warning. Blackwater Ridge stretched across the northeastern corner of Pinewood County like a jagged spine, dense forests climbing into mist-shrouded peaks. The search team gathered at the trailhead, where Jason Reeves's blue Subaru was parked. Kate swiftly organized the team while unloading Shadow. Deputy Torres and Chun would take the South Fork. Harrison and Lopez were to check the ravine. The sheriff and I would follow Shadow on the main trail. Kate presented Shadow with Jason's navy fleece from a sealed bag. The Malinois inhaled deeply, transitioning to work mode, though Kate observed the remaining tension in his posture. She firmly instructed, securing his tracking lead. After 20 minutes near a small footbridge, Shadow abruptly halted, his body becoming rigid as he analyzed the air instead of the ground. "What's he onto?" Donovan inquired. Rather than proceeding across the bridge, Shadow abruptly turned to the right, drawing Kate towards an embankment. 50 yards away was a forest green backpack, swiftly recognized as Jason's, containing his wallet and phone. The trail continued in that direction. Donovan indicated along the creek bed, where crushed plants indicated recent activity. Shadow hesitated to proceed, stubbornly pulling toward the apparently untouched forest. "Shadow, find Kate repeated, attempting to guide him. The Malinois emitted a whine, pulling with unusual force, a behavior Kate had never observed during a search. Your dog seems disoriented, Deputy Torres commented. The path is clearly alongside the water. Kate observed Shadow's concentrated gaze. I'm going with Shadow. A sense of unease settled over him regarding the creek trail. We should split up, Torres proposed. No, Kate stated decisively. If someone is intentionally leading us astray, separating could create a risk. She addressed Donovan. Sheriff, I request your confidence. 3 years with Shadow indicate we must follow his guidance. Donovan acknowledged. We will follow the dog. Torres, please note this location and communicate with the other teams. We will keep in touch via radio. Shadow took the lead as Kate and Donovan advanced further into the forest, moving away from marked trails and into a wilderness seldom visited by recreational hikers. The ground became more challenging the farther they strayed from known paths. Thick pine and old fir trees formed a natural maze, their large trunks limiting visibility to less than 20 yards. We're traveling northwest now, Donovan observed, consulting his GPS. There are no recorded trails in this area. This was old-growth forest, untouched by logging. After 30 minutes of consistent hiking, Shadow halted at the foot of a sharp ridge, his ears twitching as he analyzed the scents carried on the breeze. Suddenly, he bolted forward with such momentum that Kate briefly stumbled. Shadow, easy, she called, reasserting control of the lead. The dog had stopped at a seemingly neglected path, running across the ridge face. Service road, Donovan stated, bending down to inspect the packed soil hidden by the plants. An old one not listed on any maps we have now. As they proceeded down the neglected service road, Kate experienced a rising sense of disquiet. The woods appeared to press in on them, the overhead branches becoming denser until only infrequent beams of light reached the ground. This section was harvested in the 1920s, Donovan clarified, ending the quiet. Company archives document a minor worker settlement, consisting of impermanent buildings intended to be vacated upon the end of operations. Shadow guided them around a pronounced curve in the aged road and abruptly halted, his posture tense with focus. Kate tracked his line of sight and felt her breathing shorten. Situated within a compact clearing was a 2-story house, its time-worn, clapboard facade darkened by age and moisture. Rather than the crumbling ruin one could anticipate following a century of abandonment, the structure seemed mostly complete, with some sagging areas, dark and empty windows, but fundamentally stable. That's not a logging camp shack, Kate stated softly. No, Donovan concurred, his hand moving naturally to his sidearm. That's someone's homestead, and it shouldn't be here. The house stood before them, its aged exterior showing the marks of many seasons. As she approached, Kate observed details previously hidden from afar. Intricate Victorian-style trim around the eaves, though much of it was decayed, and vestiges of what had undoubtedly been a graceful wraparound porch, now partially collapsed at one corner. Sheriff's Department, she announced. We are conducting a search for a missing hiker. Anyone inside, please identify yourself. Only silence responded. The forest sounds appeared subdued around the property, fostering an unsettling quiet that prickled the skin on Kate's arms. I'm seeing recent footprints, Donovan observed, indicating clear marks in the yielding ground close to the porch steps. Multiple sets, some arriving, some departing. Kate bent down to study a well-defined print. This matches the tread pattern from Jason's hiking boots, based on the girlfriend's description. He was certainly here. Adhering to the established procedures for entering potentially occupied buildings during search operations, Donovan drew his service weapon, maintaining a safe downward-pointing position. He repeated, Sheriff's Department. We are entering to search the premises. The front door emitted a concerning creak as Donovan pushed it open. The interior was dimly lit, the scant daylight that penetrated through the cloudy, undamaged windows illuminated a foyer characterized by peeling wallpaper and a dust-covered wooden floor. Remarkably, the furniture was still present. A discolored mirror leaned askew on one wall, and a former elegant side table sat beneath it, its surface covered in debris. The air inside was chilly and damp, carrying the stale odor of prolonged desertion combined with something else, something less definable, something more recent. Shadow moved carefully into the foyer, his nose working constantly, head turning to register each room extending from the central space. Deviating from his typical approach, he appeared hesitant to move forward, remaining uncommonly near Kate. Living room clear, Donovan stated, inspecting the initial doorway on their right. The connected dining room and kitchen also displayed indications of emptiness, although nothing presented an immediate cause for worry, simply decades of dust, dislodged plaster, and the minor remnants left by wildlife seeking refuge. Kate noticed someone had been present, observing the kitchen table's relatively clean spots where dust had been recently moved, and noting an empty modern water bottle in one corner. Their attention then shifted to a door located beneath the main staircase, which is when Shadow's demeanor changed significantly. The Malinois halted suddenly, his body becoming rigid as he focused on the closed door. A low growl emanated from his throat. Basement access, Donovan stated softly. Kate observed a detail overlooked during their first search. Tiny symbols were etched into the door frame, abstract designs that seemed intentional, not mere random damage. Comparable markings were present on the floor at the threshold, subtle lines scratched into the aged wood. These are new, she stated, bending down to inspect them, and they're all around the door, almost as if, like a boundary or a warning, Donovan concluded. Shadow's growl intensified, his gaze firmly fixed on the basement door. Throughout 3 years of searches, building clearances, and tracking operations, Kate had never witnessed her partner exhibit such intense apprehension. Kate encountered Shadow during a difficult period in her career. Following 8 years in military police, including 2 deployments to Afghanistan, she joined the Pinewood County Sheriff's Department, anticipating a less demanding role. Her initial 2 years of service concluded with a tragic, unsuccessful attempt to locate a 4-year-old who had strayed from a campsite. The child's remains were discovered several days later, just half a mile from an area that had already been searched. This experience significantly damaged her self-assurance. Sheriff Donovan encouraged her to focus on growth instead of withdrawing, and he offered her a K-9 unit application. During training, she encountered a lean Belgian Malinois. The dog's evaluation noted high intelligence but difficulty in management, along with exceptional search aptitude and inconsistent responses to commands. The trainer stated that Shadow's intensity made him unsuitable for most handlers. Rescued from abuse at 10 months of age, the previous owner had employed harsh training techniques, essentially torture. Their partnership started with challenges. A significant turning point occurred during a night exercise when Kate fell and sustained a head injury. Instead of returning to base as instructed, Shadow remained with her throughout the night, subsequently leading her along the simplest route back, accommodating her uneven steps. Now, gazing at the basement door with its unusual markings, Kate remembered Fletcher's advice about heeding a dog's instincts even when the reason wasn't clear. Shadow wasn't simply providing an alert, he was conveying a particular message regarding what lay beyond that entrance. "I'm going to trust my partner," she told Donovan, placing her hand reassuringly on Shadow's back. "If he thinks there's something important down there, we need to find out what it is." The basement door resisted initially, then yielded with a groan of protesting hinges. Stale air surged upward, carrying the distinct mineral scent of underground spaces mixed with something less identifiable, a sharp, almost metallic undertone that made Kate's nose wrinkle. Donovan observed a temperature drop as noticeably colder air surrounded them. "Feels like 15 degrees cooler down there," he remarked. A narrow, wooden staircase led down into darkness. Kate turned on her tactical flashlight, the beam illuminating a dirt floor roughly 8 feet below. Shadow remained alert, but didn't show any eagerness to descend. This was unusual for a dog typically keen to lead the way during searches. The basement proved more expansive than Kate anticipated, stretching under the complete area of the house. Stone foundation walls upheld the structure above, with hand-hewn wooden pillars offering extra support at consistent intervals. In contrast to the comparatively undisturbed upper floor, the basement displayed indications of more recent use. "Someone has been using this space," Kate noted, aiming her light beam toward a contemporary camping lantern positioned on a weathered wooden crate. Close by, a sleeping bag was carefully rolled beside a small backpack. "Search team, this is Donovan," the sheriff spoke into his radio. "We've located possible belongings of the missing hiker in an abandoned structure. Request additional units at our GPS coordinates." Only Static answered him. They systematically documented the scene, photographing the items with their phones. The backpack contained energy bars, a first aid kit, and a well-worn trail map of Blackwater Ridge with handwritten annotations. A notebook close at hand contained puzzling notes. The last one was dated the day Jason vanished. "Returning inside today, assuming the stories about this location are accurate, I should possess evidence that cannot be questioned." Shadow, who had been examining the room's boundaries while staying near Kate, abruptly tensed, his focus fixed on the distant wall. Kate instantly understood his stance, the identical alert posture he adopted when locating concealed objects during evidence searches. Shadow informed Donovan, who had been studying markings on a support pillar. The wall that had attracted Shadow's attention seemed unremarkable initially, consisting of roughly hewn stone blocks. However, as Kate drew nearer, her flashlight illuminated slight variations in the mortar arrangement approximately halfway along its length. Working together, they scrutinized the wall section meticulously, ultimately finding a skillfully hidden device, a jutting stone that, when pushed in, disengaged a latch. Accompanied by a soft scraping noise, a portion of the wall, roughly 3 feet in width, swung inward, exposing a narrow passage on the other side. This passage led to a circular room, approximately 15 feet in diameter, with a floor of fitted stone slabs. The walls displayed faded inscriptions, unknown script, and elaborate geometric designs. A stone table, appearing like an altar and bearing a dark stain, was positioned in the center. 7 candles formed a perfect circle around it, 3 of which had recently been lit, showing soft wax. The items placed on the altar were particularly unsettling: a driver's license, watch, and cell phone Kate recognized from the missing person report. These were Jason's belongings, and she documented them with photographs, careful not to move anything. The question remained, where was he? Shadow's anxiety became apparent as he moved around the room. He moved toward the altar, then retreated, conflicted by his investigative training and an intense feeling of reluctance. Kate's flashlight wavered, then noticeably weakened. Donovan's did the same. A subtle hum resonated from the walls, intensifying until Kate felt it vibrating within her. The temperature dropped sharply, their exhaled breath appearing as frosty vapor. Shadow's actions changed significantly. He settled against Kate's legs, forming a protective posture, his gaze directed at an empty corner, his fur bristling. Rather than his usual forceful barking when facing danger, he remained quietly watchful. "We must leave," Kate stated, relying on Shadow's judgment. Immediately, as they moved back, Kate's weakening light revealed one last detail: a recently inscribed name etched into the altar's edge. Beneath those others faded with time: Jason Reeves. Upon exiting the concealed room, Donovan attempted to use his radio, but it only produced the same peculiar static. Kate examined her phone. There was no signal, and the battery had dropped from 85% to 17% during their short time in the basement. A gentle thud from the level above halted them at the foot of the staircase, followed by the clear sound of footsteps on aging, creaking floorboards. "Someone's up there," Kate murmured, drawing her sidearm. The missing hiker could be this person. The main floor seemed unoccupied as they carefully exited the basement. Daylight had faded considerably. Checking her watch, she realized they had been inside for fewer than 40 minutes, but the light suggested late afternoon, not midday. Shadow suddenly became alert, his focus drawn to a small secretary desk in the corner that they hadn't previously inspected closely. The roll top of the desk had been opened, showing a stack of leather-bound journals almost neatly arranged inside. The topmost volume lay open, its pages filled with handwritten text that seemed surprisingly new compared to the old paper. Kate studied the open page, feeling a sudden chill unrelated to the basement's dampness. The writing detailed names and dates of people who've disappeared in these woods. The journal entries originated in 1893 and were written at inconsistent intervals throughout the years. Certain names were accompanied by supplemental information, including ages, occupations, and details regarding disappearances. Kate identified several entries referencing unsolved missing persons cases she had become familiar with after joining the department. Particularly unsettling was the last entry, concerning Jason Reeves, which bore yesterday's date and a specific time. 3:17 p.m. Shadow abruptly growled, turning to confront the doorway. Moments passed, then a significant crash echoed from the upper floor, indicating furniture was being knocked over or displaced. Sheriff's Department, Donovan announced, approaching the foot of the central staircase. Identify yourself immediately. Only silence responded, accompanied by another crash, this time directly above them. Plaster dust drifted down from the ceiling. The staircase creaked under their cautious ascent, weapons drawn. The upper hallway split into 4 rooms, the doors showing different levels of damage. Shadow guided them toward the closest entrance, his carefulness apparent in each measured step. The bedroom inside looked untouched initially, featuring a 4-poster bed with a decaying mattress, a wardrobe against one wall, and faded curtains still present at the windows. Then Kate observed the wardrobe doors gradually opening, despite the absence of any breeze or disruption that might cause the movement. Deputy Chen's voice abruptly broke through their radios, startling them both. Sheriff, come in. We've been trying to reach you for over an hour. Donovan pressed his transmit button. Chun, we're inside a structure approximately 2 miles northwest of the backpack location. Possible evidence of the missing hiker found. Sir, we can barely read you. Signals breaking up. Do you need assistance? Affirmative. Track our GPS coordinates. Approach with caution. Kate went to the window, hoping to spot the approaching search team from afar. However, she stopped, stunned by the scene before her. The area around the house appeared altered. The forest seemed nearer, thicker, the trees leaning inward, as if the woods had somehow moved closer while they were inside. A floorboard groaned behind them, though neither had shifted. Shadow turned toward the noise, positioning himself between Kate and the vacant corner of the room. The temperature plummeted rapidly, their breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. As if to emphasize her statement, a door slammed somewhere down the hallway, then another. The sound of footsteps, numbering more than one person could manage, reverberated from several directions at once. We retreated the way we had come, Donovan decided, moving toward the bedroom door, only to discover it was closed, despite neither of them having touched it. Kate grasped the doorknob, finding it intensely cold. The door rotated without obstruction, yet remained unyielding, as if a significant force held it back from the hallway. Donovan proposed examining the window, and immediately moved towards it. The old frame initially resisted his attempt to lift the sash, but then yielded with a scattering of paint chips and debris. A blast of cold rain rushed in, bringing with it the fragrance of damp soil and pine. Shadow's growl intensified, his attention still directed towards the apparently vacant corner of the room. Kate had grown accustomed to relying on her partner's instincts, especially when they sensed threats she couldn't identify. Whatever was in that corner registered as dangerous to the Malinois. Kate secured her sidearm and proceeded cautiously as a forceful impact rattled the bedroom door. The old wood fractured but remained intact. A second impact splintered the frame along one side. The fall to the ground outside was roughly 12 feet, negotiable but potentially hazardous. Kate descended from the sill, using her hands to lower herself and minimize the drop to the muddy earth below. She landed unevenly but sustained no injuries, quickly arranging herself to be in shadow. Donovan raised the Malinois, who appeared remarkably compliant with the handling, reinforcing Kate's sense that the dog detected significant danger within. Shadow permitted himself to be passed through the window, his 65 pounds of muscle momentarily suspended before Donovan released him to Kate below. Another crash originated from inside the bedroom, followed by Donovan's startled shout. Kate looked up to observe the sheriff struggling with the window sash, which had unexpectedly slammed down, nearly trapping his hands. "Something's got it," he called, straining against the seemingly immovable window. Shadow barked sharply, not an alert for danger, but his specific call for Kate's attention. The Malinois was focused on a point at the corner of the house, where weathered clapboards met in a seam that appeared to be separating unnaturally. revealing darkness beyond. "Sheriff, another exit," Kate called up to Donovan. "Meet me at the front of the house." Kate drew her weapon again, using her flashlight to illuminate the darkened passage beyond the open doors. Rough-hewn stone steps descended into darkness. The air rising from below held the same metallic odor they'd noticed in the basement. Shadow seemed to want her to go down, but everything she's felt in the house cautioned against returning. The dog whimpered, scratching at the initial step, his eagerness unmistakable. "Kate," Donovan's voice called from somewhere near the front of the house. "Where are you?" Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed from inside the house, the clear sound of a structural failure. Dust puffed out from an upstairs window as a portion of the roof collapsed. Shadow's fur stood on end, a soft growl vibrating in his chest, aimed not at the cellar entrance behind them, but toward the sound of Donovan's voice. A chilling sense of conviction settled in Kate's stomach. "That's not the sheriff," she whispered, completely believing Shadow's judgment. The dog maintained its position, preventing anyone or anything from approaching from around the corner. Kate retreated towards the cellar entrance, keeping her weapon aimed at the side of the building. Shadow followed her, continuing his protective posture. The constricted tunnel stretched roughly 20 feet before leading into what seemed to be a mechanical room, containing antiquated, rusted machinery indicative of a coal furnace system from the house's initial construction. This area, in contrast to the basement they had explored previously, exhibited no indications of recent activity. A door on the distant wall likely linked to the main basement. Kate bypassed it, opting to follow Shadow toward a section of foundation wall that had partially collapsed. The Malinois readily passed through the opening, appearing outside into thick underbrush that had hidden this gap from view. "Sheriff Donovan, come in." Kate tried on her radio, but only received static. She trailed Shadow roughly 50 yards through thick foliage before daring to look back towards the house. Through openings in the trees, she observed its outline. The partially collapsed roof was now releasing smoke despite the heavy rain. Even more unsettling was the movement she noticed at several windows, with shadows moving across them, despite the fact that they had discovered no other people inside. "Kate," the authentic voice of Sheriff Donovan interrupted her focus on the house. He appeared from the trees to her right, soaked and muddied, but seemingly unharmed. "Thank God, I thought you were still inside." Shadow's reaction verified this was truly Donovan. The dog's posture softened, his tail giving a quick wag of recognition. "How did you escape?" Kate inquired, observing a bleeding cut along the sheriff's hairline. "The back staircase gave way while he was on it," he recounted, resulting in him ending up in some kind of root cellar. He found a storm door leading out, and then he paused, seemingly having difficulty expressing his experience. Something was present with him inside, not a person, at least not anymore. Shadow abruptly tensed, his focus returning to the house in the distance. Kate followed his gaze, observing what seemed to be several figures exiting the front door. They were obscured by the rain and fading light, but clearly advancing purposefully toward their position. "We need to go," she stated, her strategic mind rapidly assessing their choices. The primary objective was to extract safely and redirect backup teams away from the house. After 20 minutes of consistent travel, they arrived at the ridge line, offering a view of the valley where the house was situated. From their high vantage point, they observed several flashlight beams in the distance, indicating the search teams were closing in, following their last known coordinates. "We need to stop them before they reach the house," Donovan stated, attempting his radio once more. This time, Deputy Torres responded clearly. "Sheriff, we've been trying to reach you for hours." "Listen carefully," Donovan replied. "Do not approach the structure at these coordinates. I repeat, do not approach. We are maneuvering to block your team's advance from the ridge line north of your current location." Within an hour, they had successfully met up with the search teams and created a security zone half a mile from the house. As full darkness enveloped the forest, the decision was reached to pause operations until morning. The missing hiker, Jason Reeves, was still not found. A flickering light appeared through the trees, not a consistent beam from a flashlight, but the shifting appearance of flames. The house, despite the pouring rain, was now completely consumed by fire, the glow still visible from their location. 1 month later, Kate's office wall showcased an expanding array of photographs, maps, and notes linked by red string, representing her personal inquiry. Jason Reeves remained listed as missing with no new information. The formal search continued for 2 weeks, involving numerous agencies, cadaver dogs, and ground-penetrating radar covering 10 square miles. The search yielded no results, no body was discovered, nor any further evidence besides the peculiar house that had burned completely to its foundation before firefighters arrived. Kate attached a newspaper clipping from 1922 to her board, detailing the destruction of Old Blackwater House in a fire that claimed the lives of 7 members of the Thorne family. The article mentioned local beliefs that the property had been plagued by misfortune since it was built. Her phone rang. "Morgan, this is Torres. Regarding the research you asked for? 16 disappearances have been recorded within a 5-mile radius of Blackwater Ridge, a number 3 times higher than what's typically seen in comparable wilderness areas. Any patterns?" Kate inquired. The disappearances tend to occur in clusters of 3 or 4 individuals within a few months, followed by years of no further incidents. Has anyone ever been located? Only one person. A Forest Service worker was discovered wandering along Highway 16 3 months later in 1978. He had no recollection of his whereabouts and was malnourished, but sustained no other injuries. Following the phone call, Kate added the details to her board while Shadow stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the photograph of the house foundation. "What did you perceive there?" she inquired softly. Shadow immediately growled, his focus directed at the window where darkness now filled the view. Kate observed a fleeting movement in the tree line, the shadows seeming distorted. She swiftly lowered the blinds, spotting a manila envelope on the exterior windowsill, a package that couldn't be reached without a ladder from her second-floor office. A single photograph lay within, showing Jason Reeves positioned in front of the undamaged Blackwater house, his expression unreadable, bearing a timestamp 3 days following their investigation. Written on the reverse in elegant handwriting was the phrase, "The house always returns. So do we." Shadow brushed against her legs as a shiver traced its way down her spine. Outside, limbs scraped against the structure, sounding like searching fingers. For the first time in her professional life, Kate wished that certain enigmas would remain beyond resolution. Have you ever observed your pet responding to something imperceptible that prompted a feeling of unease? Animals demonstrate senses extending beyond human capabilities. They perceive frequencies beyond our hearing range, scent traces too subtle for us to notice, and possibly energies that science has yet to explain. What could your dog or cat be perceiving when they abruptly pause, focusing intensely on a vacant area of your home? Do you consider that some locations retain echoes of previous occurrences that certain perceptive animals are able to detect? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section. We are eager to read your stories. If this puzzling cold case gave you chills, remember to click the subscribe button and enable notifications to stay updated with our regular uploads about remarkable dog stories. Give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more unsolved mysteries, and share it with those who value the unique capabilities of our canine friends. Be sure to view our additional unexplained canine encounters currently displaying. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video that explores the remarkable world of working dogs and the mysteries they help us uncover.